to prosecute and imprison journalists for leaks of national security information. He'll classify more and scale back things like the Freedom of Information Act. I think he'll put pressure on owners. He will encourage his allies to bring libel suits. He'll try to put pressure on advertisers. They intend to go after the press in every conceivable way.
Trump and his MAGA allies have made it clear what the end goal is: a more obedient and obsequious press.
The media's tamed down a little bit. They're liking us much better now, I think. If they don't, we'll have to just take them on again, and we don't want to do that.
Joining me now is E.J. Dionne, columnist with The Washington Post, and Hugo Lowell, senior political correspondent with The Guardian. My thanks to both of you for getting us started tonight. E.J., I want to start with you. Why? Why obey in advance with someone like Donald Trump?
I think that's the right question. And I think the list of threats that Marty Baron put forward is very important. And I also think it's especially important that large media institutions that can afford to defend all these lawsuits actually not fold before this threat. Because if large institutions start giving in, what's going to happen to the smaller ones? And I think one of the problems of litigation of this sort is that for organizations without much money, this is an enormous barrier to go to reporting. It can put a lot of those places out of business if they decide to fight these lawsuits. And up to now, the courts have been very sympathetic to the idea that the public has a right to know that a free press is enshrined in the Constitution and that they have to have the freedom to report on what's happening in the government. So this is a very, very serious thing that Trump is threatening, just as Marty Baron outlined.
You know, Hugo, the problem for me is it seems as if it's not just obeying in advance, but the problem is also you're almost buying some type of access to Donald Trump. It's if you're not going to play ball, then you're going to be an enemy. And so you either settle a defamation lawsuit the way that ABC did, or you kind of kowtow in advance and you kind of say, you know what, I've done the cost benefit analysis and it makes better sense for me and my financial bottom line to be able to keep a safe distance from you if you're Donald Trump.
Yeah, the ABC settling that defamation suit really was not helpful to anyone in the press, frankly, because that only has emboldened people in Trump world. You know, if you talk to the lawyers this weekend over what happened, they're very, very happy. Like, you know, this is fantastic. You know, this opens up the path for them to sue other news outlets, other individual reporters, and they're absolutely discussing this. I mean, the moment they were done with the ABC suit, the discussion shifted to, ooh, who's next? Maybe it's CBS. We really didn't like that 60 Minutes thing. And then on Sunday night at the New York Young Republican Club Gala, which I attended, you know, the keynote speaker was Steve Bannon. And Steve Bannon was talking about it's time to prosecute the news media and people on this network as well. And so what has previously been confined to the ethers of the MAGA universe is now coming out to the fore, and they're feeling emboldened to do it. And I think we should take this extremely seriously because they're saying it out loud now.
You know, EJ, this is nothing new when you look at a history of autocrats. Part of the way that they are effective in being able to control the people is to control the narrative. And I'm not trying to be, you know, kind of casual when I say that the press should keep that line of demarcation, the independence from being able to have to be fearing somebody like Donald Trump. But I also understand that there is a logistical and financial implication that becomes a part of the analysis. But at this point, it's like, why not just say that all independent media doesn't exist really, and that everything ends up being just state propaganda?
At least for now, and I agree with Hugo that they're settling that suit is problematic going forward. But right now, we still have a free press. Right now, we still have institutions that historically have stood up. If you go back to the Pentagon Papers case and the New York Times and the Washington Post standing up to enormous amounts of pressure. Now, you do with media companies have these very complicated set of interests these days that I think makes these issues even more difficult. But your premise is right that if you can have people in power using whatever tools they have, whether it's defamation suits or other powers the government has, for example, to prosecute on leaks, then you will have a situation where you've got leaders trying to intimidate the press into supporting them, or at least not reporting things that are inconvenient to them. The term that Trump used, straightening them out, put a little chill up on my spine when I heard it at the beginning of the show.
You know, Hugo, former Time magazine editor Rick Stengel wrote that Trump has sued dozens of publications and media outlets in order to intimidate the press into self-censorship, not to actually win any particular case. I mean, I have to ask, do you agree with that concept? Because we all knew the history of how litigious Donald Trump is, a courtroom, a lawsuit. He's no stranger to that. But in this instance, what I found to be very interesting about that quote from Rick is that it's called self-censorship. It's one thing to have to sue or try to prosecute a suit, and then you get a result. It's a whole other thing to bend the knee in advance and to do, as we've been talking about and as Tim Snyder talks about, is obeying in advance.
Look, you're already seeing some of examples in the mainstream media, right? Like, it doesn't come down to individual reporters. I don't see individual reporters on the Trump beat or covering the White House, you know, self-censoring their reporting and pulling punches. But we have seen executives at other, you know, media companies, for instance, the LA Times and elsewhere, kind of wade into what are editorial spheres and try and impart what they think should be the way that the news is being delivered. And sometimes, I mean, if you are a media executive, I can totally understand, you know, where the thinking comes from. You know, for instance, if you have financial interests, if you have M&A activity that you want to be green-lit in the coming admin, I can see why you would maybe not want to upset Trump or get on his bad side in a way that he might, you know, block a deal. And so there is going to be this colossal fight between media executives if they feel like they need to come in and wade in on reporting matters, and individual reporters and editors who I think feel very, very strongly, especially in Washington and on the White House beat in particular, that what they're doing is a public service and that they shouldn't pull punches. But we'll have to see. It's really complicated.
You know, EJ, Hugo just very subtly dropped that M&A language in there, this idea that potential future business dealings like a merger and acquisition could be impacted by whether or not you provide the right kind of coverage, wink, wink, of the current administration. If that's the case, then shouldn't we just dispel with the BS of the idea that this is a, quote, independent fourth estate, if this is a particular outlet or publication, and that you really aren't actually delivering the news, you really are just delivering something that's skewed by what you're fearing is potentially going to happen?
I pray that that never happens. But I think you saw it in the first Trump administration where they were wielding these threats against mergers involving media companies. And I think what it requires, maybe this is very old-fashioned to me, but I think what it requires is if you own a media company, you have to have the guts, the courage, the determination to resist that kind of pressure. Now, I suppose that's easy for me to say. I don't have billions of dollars on the line in any of these deals. But I think that's the responsibility you take in a democratic republic when you own a media institution. And I think a lot of people in the first Trump term did resist that. There was pressure the first time around from Trump in these matters, and the media kept reporting what needed to get reported. And I think we're just going to have to look to people who own these companies to say, if I'm going to be in this business, I'm going to take the responsibilities that are involved in this business, and I'm going to take them seriously.
Well, let me tell you guys, as I say goodbye, there really isn't anybody who's better situated, though, than big companies that have the financial wherewithal to withstand an onslaught when it comes to litigation versus just the average day American citizen. E.J. Dionne and Hugo Lowell, thanks so much for getting us started tonight. It's good to see you both. And coming up, new pressure on RFK Jr.'s controversial nomination as he hits Capitol Hill. And a red state official targeting a blue state doctor over the abortion pill. We're going to explain that. But first, new insights into the drone mystery in the Northeast when we're back in just 90 seconds.
You make good choices. They've shaped your journey to leave all that your life built rock solid for generations. With ambition like that, you need someone who elevates advice to a craft. At UBS, we match your vision with insight and expertise to shape a unique outcome for you. Advice is our craft.
Hi, I'm Jay Jackson. For almost 20 years, Abacus Life has been purchasing life insurance policies from seniors. And in just seconds, you can use the free calculator at abacuspays.com to learn what your policy might be worth.
For many of my clients, selling their life insurance to Abacus was right for them and their estate plan.
Don't sell or lapse your policy without going to abacuspays.com first. There are no fees and no obligations. Get the real value from your life insurance when you need it with Abacus.
When I was younger, my calling was to play football. But as I grew older, I realized life isn't about how many people you can knock down. It's about how many people you can lift up. At Ram, our calling is to build game-changing trucks. So when you find your calling, nothing can stop you from answering it.
Right now, during the Ram Wrap Up the Year sales event, get $5,000 total cash allowance on the purchase of most 2025 Ram 1500 trucks. Hurry to your local Ram dealer today.
I want to turn to a story it seems everyone is talking about. That's drones. For nearly a month now, New Jersey residents have been reporting sightings of what they think are drones. You can see here a series of videos that have been taken by curious onlookers. News reports saying residents are on edge, though, while officials try to downplay news of the sightings to reassure the public. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas telling the public that officials are on it.
In September of 2023, the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, changed the rules so that drones could fly at night. I want to assure the American public that we are on it. We are working in close coordination with state and local authorities.
But so far, officials have not successfully been able to assuage public concern. Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie saying this weekend that he thinks the activity is unusual.
To say this is not unusual activity, it's just wrong. I lived in New Jersey my whole life. This is the first time that I've noticed drones over my house.
A White House National Security Council official telling NBC News, quote, "We have no evidence at this time that these reported sightings pose a national security or public safety threat or have a foreign nexus." Joining me now is Tom Adams, former FBI supervisory special agent who helped pioneer the FBI's counter-drone program. Tom, it's good to have you here, and yet I'm not sure, do you have the answers? Okay, so it's New Jersey, so a lot of interesting things happen in New Jersey, but it's not just New Jersey that these things are being spotted, and I'm not totally reassured myself that the federal officials being on it is necessarily providing the answers that maybe we deserve.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the show. This is a really complicated challenge, to say the least, and with so many reports out there and the challenges in trying to identify and corroborate some of these suspected visual detections of drones at nights is really complicated. And there's so many reports and things to sort through. I think it's unrealistic that we're going to get all the answers that we would like to have from local, state, or federal officials. I think something that's really important to bring up here is, first of all, I commend the residents of New Jersey and elsewhere who are being very vigilant. Something that DHS has always asked people to do is to, if you see something, say something. But I think now is a good time to have a tactical pause and really start to assess, what really is a drone threat. As the DHS Secretary mentioned, drones can fly at night. And so just, the mere presence of a drone really isn't in and of itself a threat. We should be looking a couple of levels deeper so we can really understand what sort of behavior is going on with the drone that would really constitute whether it is actually a threat.
Tom, is this a cart before the horse situation, though? Is it fair for us to actually establish and say, as we are right now, that those are drones definitively? Could it be something other than a drone?
Absolutely. The characteristics of a drone at night are, you might see white lights on the drone. It might have white, red and green lights, and it might be stationary in the airspace or moving through the airspace. And there's other things in the airspace, too, that are often mistaken for drones. And I can tell you personally from my experience with the FBI's counter-UAS program and conducting this mission at high-profile events and venues, as well as conducting investigations into the suspected sighting of drones at critical infrastructure, things like planets, low Earth orbit satellites, and manned aircraft were very often misidentified as drones at night. Some people might say, well, how can a planet be misidentified? I actually had that happen during an operation, and it was 1.6 billion miles away at the time. But what's really happening here is it's at night, your depth perception is not very good. So a aircraft that is 30,000 feet up in the air and 20 miles away may look like a drone hovering a half mile away and 100 feet above the tree. So it's really difficult to deconflict those things at night, but it's good that there's awareness out there. And so maybe with continued awareness and, really recalibrating what is or is not a drone threat, we can reduce the amount of reports that are coming in, and then local officials and federal officials can really hone in on some of those more credible threats and maybe provide us with some answers.
And before I have to let you go, though, I really wanted to ask this question, Tom, which is, there is stuff that's going on vis-a-vis law enforcement. I appreciate the desire to get the transparency from law enforcement in terms of answers, but it's a pretty safe assumption then, isn't it, Tom, that there is an investigation or multiple investigations going on to determine the genesis of these things that people are seeing and whether or not they do pose a domestic security threat to Americans?
Absolutely. I mean, I've seen news reports and have talked to people that have, firsthand knowledge of the situation. I believe that local, state, and federal law enforcement are really trying to get to the bottom of it. We see the reports of, technologies moving into New Jersey to supplement maybe what's already there. And I've seen actually law enforcement agencies putting up drones and crewed aircraft, manned aircraft to see if they can get to the bottom of it. So I really do believe that people are looking into it.
Tom Adams, thank you for the answers as we still wait for the answers. But I appreciate you being here. Thanks. And later in the show, the clash over abortion rights expands as Red Texas sues a doctor in Blue New York in a case that could have sweeping legal impacts. Also tonight, how the very tech CEOs that are courting Trump now, well, they used to blast him, including, of course, Elon Musk. Plus, Trump blitzed by questions about vaccine conspiracy theories as the RFK Jr. nomination falls under intense new scrutiny.
Jordan's sore nose let out a fiery sneeze, so Dad grabbed Puffs Plus lotion to soothe her with ease. Puffs Plus lotion is gentle on sensitive skin and locks in moisture to provide soothing relief. A nose in need deserves Puffs Indeed, America's #1 lotion tissue.
Hey, grab more delectables. You know, that lickable cat treat.
Delickable delectables.
Yes, just hurry.
Must be delicious.
Delectables, lickable treat. Deliciously delickable delectables.
New projects means new project managers. You need to hire.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. When you sponsor a job on Indeed, it's easier for talented candidates to find it, which makes it easier for you to hire them. Visit Indeed.com/hire.
I'm Amy Grant, and I want to talk to you from my heart about the heart. I would have been the last person on the list to say this woman has a problem with her heart. So no, there was nothing about my life that said, you have a ticking time bomb in your chest. But I did. I wound up in the office of a cardiologist because I was there with my husband. And at the tail end of that, the cardiologist looked at me and said, I want to see you. No one was more surprised than I was to learn I was living with a rare heart condition. He said, Amy, this condition, you'll be fine, and then catastrophic. A few months later, I had open heart surgery that saved my life. And I owe it to the research and life-saving medical breakthroughs developed by the American Heart Association. That's why I'm asking you to join me and become a monthly donor to the American Heart Association. Please call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough, get the next person trained in CPR, and get the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. If this could happen to me, it could happen to anybody. Heart disease is America's #1 killer, but your support can save your life or the life of someone you love. Give $19 a month with your credit card, and we'll send you this special t-shirt you can wear to show you're part of a community of monthly donors working to help save more lives like mine. I'm grateful for the American Heart Association. Their research gave me more time to do the things I love with the people I love. So listen to your heart. I'm here today because I did. Call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org now to become a monthly donor. Give this holiday season and your first month's gift will be matched. Thank you.
Ooh, stuffed up again?
So congested.
You need Sinex Saline from Vicks.
Just Sinex? Breathe. What is... Wow. Sinex? Breathe.
Is your shower trying to tell you something? Is getting in and out of the bathtub becoming a safety concern? Are you worried about the cost of a bathroom remodel that could go on for weeks and weeks? Well, now you can have a gorgeous new bath or shower with a one-day jacuzzi bath remodel that's safer at a price you can afford. We're waiving all installation costs and postponing all payments for up to 1 year.
Oh my gosh. It is beautiful. Oh.
From soft close shower doors and adjustable shower heads to features like grab bars and custom seats that combine safety and style, it's never been easier. Get your free design consultation, schedule your one-day installation, and start loving your new bath or shower right away.
There are only weeks remaining during our limited time offer. We're waiving all installation costs and offering no interest and no payments for up to 1 year. Go to jacuzzibathremodel.com or call 800-991-0632.
New heat tonight on RFK Jr., Trump's pick for Health and Human Services Secretary. This morning, reporters bombarding Trump with questions about RFK's controversial views on vaccines, views that health experts say are false and at odds with overwhelming medical and scientific evidence.
Do you believe there's a connection between vaccines and autism? Do you believe there's a link?
Well, I don't look. Right now, you have some very brilliant people looking at it. RFK, as you know, and Oz.
On vaccines, do you want RFK Jr. to revoke any vaccines?
I follow up on Robert Kennedy. What do you say to people who are worried that his views on vaccines will translate into policies that will make their kids less safe?
No, I think he's going to be much less radical than you would think.
What about the polio vaccine?
Well, I'm a big believer in it.
Do you think schools should mandate vaccines?
I don't like mandates.
GOP senators may actually ask some of those same questions because they're meeting with RFK Jr. in D.C. this week amid a series of troubling reports. The latest from the Washington Post, which details the false and debunked views of Kennedy's preferred pick to run the CDC, a former GOP lawmaker with a long record of, quote, promoting the disproven link between vaccines and autism. Remember, the current CDC director under President Biden has raised alarms about figures like RFK spreading, quote, misinformation from a place of power. All of this follows reporting from the New York Times that a top lawyer for Kennedy has pushed to revoke the polio vaccine. Yes, you heard that right. The vaccine, which has helped and benefited generations of Americans. All of these reports and questions swirling as RFK Jr. hits D.C., trying to avoid becoming the next Matt Gaetz. Joining me now is Melanie Zanona, senior congressional reporter for Punchbowl News, also a political contributor for us here at MSNBC, and Molly Ball, senior political correspondent for the Wall Street Journal. So nice to see both of you. Melanie, I want to start with you. You're here. I mean, what are you hearing from your sources on the Hill? I mean, RFK Jr. got favorite child status always with Donald Trump, but these are kind of inescapable realities for people like Mitch McConnell, for example.
Right. So he's starting to make his rounds on Capitol Hill today. So far, no Republican senators have outright come out and said that they oppose him either publicly or privately, which I think is a really important distinction versus what happened with Matt Gaetz, where we were hearing that privately Republicans were saying we are a hard no and we are against him. That doesn't mean there isn't skepticism with him. And with RFK Jr., there's a lot of different cross currents going on and why there might be opposition to him. He is spoken in favor of abortion rights, so that could run into trouble with the pro-life groups. He has also talked about reforming the industrial agriculture community in a big way, which could run into problems with the big ag industry from Republicans in red states, particularly places like Iowa, where there's a lot of corn. And then, of course, his extreme views on vaccines. You can run into issues with more moderates like Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski, or Mitch McConnell, as you mentioned, who was a childhood polio survivor himself. So we're starting to see his strategy come into focus about how he's going to assuage some of these concerns. He told reporters earlier today, I'm all for the polio vaccine, making that very clear. We're also told in private meetings he's been talking up some of the policies that are more popular, like, fighting childhood obesity and preventing chronic disease and talking up healthy food initiatives, stuff that has no partisan lines and that Republicans and Democrats alike are supporting. But right now, it's clear that he's going to make it to the confirmation process at a minimum. I think most of these nominees are at this point. It's just a matter of how does he do in that confirmation hearing, and do these concerns, which are really centered on more policy concerns rather than personal conduct, how does that sit with some of these senators, and are their concerns assuaged?
Well, I think, Molly, it's actually fair to say that there is some personal conduct from RFK Jr. that does raise some eyebrows. But I guess, is the sleight of hand thing working, though? This idea of, as Melanie just said, I'm going to focus on reducing obesity, which nobody's going to object to, right? And improving nutrition, nobody's going to object to that either. But it's like, hey, look at this, when this huge glaring red flag alarm is going off about vaccines. Do people really think that this is going to work?
Well, I think Mel is exactly right that first of all, those personal concerns. I mean, he does have a very long and checkered and interesting personal history. Everything from the repeated reports of weird interactions with dead animals that we heard about during the campaign, to he's written a whole memoir about his history of very intense drug use and philandering and so forth. But that's really not the main thing that the senators are concerned about. It is these policy concerns. And it is, I think, the vaccine stuff that we're going to hear about the most. And I don't think he's going to be able to just paper over this by saying, look at these things that we all agree on. We all agree that kids should be healthier. We all agree that, maybe we should look at the food supply and make sure that all of the additives are safe, or whatever chemicals are going into things. Those things are very easy for people to say, sure, they all sound good. But in those private meetings with senators, he's going to get a lot of hard questions about his stances on vaccines that can't just be waved away by saying, oh, I don't think there should be any mandates. I mean, senators know that particularly with childhood vaccines, the way Trump talked about it in his press conference today was to conflate the concerns about the COVID vaccine and whether that should be mandated, which I think there's a lot of legitimate debate about, particularly in children. It's a completely different debate than the childhood vaccines, which RFK has been an activist against childhood vaccine mandates for a long time. And those are the vaccines where the experts really say you have to mandate that everybody gets these vaccines in childhood or you don't achieve the herd immunity. And as a lot of parents have become more skeptical about these vaccines in recent years, we have seen outbreaks of diseases such as measles that had been virtually eradicated in prior years. So you can't just say, we're not going to mandate and everybody can decide whether or not they want their kid to get this vaccine, because the mandates are there for a reason. And so I think RFK is going to get a lot of hard questions about these policy issues that he potentially would have a say in as HHS secretary. Senators are not as concerned about all of the sort of noise and distractions that they don't see as having anything to do with the job he's actually being asked to do.
I mean, Melanie, on a personal level, I have a problem with this idea that you can kind of not look at the person as a whole and that you can just shelve your concerns about maybe some of the personal picadillos and issues that he has. But the thing I have that I really kind of want our viewers to understand is the following. So he meets with senators behind closed doors. We presume that there's some strong questioning going on of RFK Jr. about his positions on things like vaccines, for example. But then when the public gets the ability to consume the information that's being provided by a person who's going to end up having an impact on everyone in the United States, that's a public Senate confirmation hearing. So how do we reconcile this, Melanie? Because I don't know what the hell this guy says behind closed doors. I know what he says maybe in public, but maybe there was a deal that was struck between him and a senator that maybe kind of smooths it over a little bit to be able to say, I'll vote for you.
Yeah, it is a totally different process, these behind closed door meetings versus the public confirmation hearing. That's where Democrats feel like they're going to really come into play, is grilling RFK on what may have been said, what deals may have been struck, what sort of things he has said. For example, talking about the abortion issue, one thing that the abortion rights groups, anti-abortion right groups are looking for is for him to appoint someone who is a pro-life sort of leader in the community to a senior position at HHS. It's unclear whether he's made any of those promises. That is certainly something that Democrats are going to want to dig into. But at this stage, I would say, especially for Republicans, they don't have a lot of incentives to really share what is going on behind closed doors. They're going to say it was a productive meeting. We're going through the process. There is going to be a public confirmation hearing, though, for all of these nominees at this point, it's looking like. So that is really going to be, the high-stakes showdown where you have Democrats who can call witnesses. They have their own line of questioning. That process is still a little far away. It's not going to happen until the new year, but that will be the next really big hurdle for all of these nominees, including RFK Jr.
Molly, the last thing is this. Doesn't all this distract, though, from other Trump picks like Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, Pete Hegseth, et cetera? I mean, we can all walk and chew gum at the same time. And yet this is like, again, shiny ball, shiny issue here, outrageous, nominee here. And I kind of feel like we're just moving from one outrage to the next.
Well, they're all important. I mean, the Secretary of Health and Human Services is not a distraction in the sense that if confirmed, he would be serving in a very important position in the administration, overseeing one of the largest departments in the government with a lot of important responsibilities. I mean, I take your point that there are a lot of Trump cabinet nominees, just as, every cabinet is this size, I guess. But, a lot of them are unorthodox for various reasons and have raised questions for various reasons. But look, I mean, these senators take their jobs seriously, even if they are likely, I think, to fall in line once they feel like they've gotten their questions answered. But they're not going to, skip over any one of these nominees, and they're all going to have to go through the process of hearings that Mel was describing. And in that process, Democrats get a crack at them as well. So they're all going to go through a vetting process, even if not everyone will necessarily be happy with the results.
It's the falling in line part that Molly talks about that makes me the most nervous. Melanie Zanona and Molly Ball, happy holidays. And thanks to both of you for being here. I always appreciate it. And coming up next, a landmark lawsuit in Texas now threatening doctors who provide telehealth abortion care to women.
New Alka-Seltzer Plus Cold or Flu Fizzy Chews. Chew, fizz. Feel better fast. No water needed. New Alka-Seltzer Plus Fizzy Chews.
48% of Americans don't get enough magnesium, which is vital for bone, nerve, and muscle health. I recommend Cunol's Magnesium Glycinate. It's formulated for high absorption and is gentle on the stomach. Cunol, the brand I trust.
What drives your business? Numbers, data, sales? Sure, but it's your people who define your business. That's why Paychex just reinvented the way to find and keep the best people. Smart, streamlined HR technology assisted by AI and our team of HR experts. Everything you need to recruit, motivate, and support your employees. Because your people are your business. Start reinventing your business at paychex.com/TV.
صعبة كثير رعب وطبعا هلا يعني أنا بحس بالرعب الكبير بدنا بس نعيش بأمان.
Conflict is raging across the world, and millions of children's lives are being devastated by war, hunger, disease, and poverty. We urgently need your help to reach children in crisis.
Use of abortion pills has skyrocketed since the Supreme Court gutted Roe v. Wade, with the pills now accounting for nearly 2/3 of all abortions. So far, the New York doctor involved in the lawsuit has yet to offer any public comment. Joining me now for more is Barbara McQuaid, former United States attorney and an MSNBC legal analyst. Barb, this is one of the most fascinating lawsuits, and yet kind of like a bad kind of canary in the coal mine lawsuit, if I may, because, you know, Texas AG Ken Paxton, he's known for his outrageous litigation tactics, but this one, in my opinion, is beyond the pale. I wanted to get your gauge out of the gate, how successful you think he's going to be with this particular lawsuit.
Yeah, Kitty, in some ways, this is like a law school hypothetical on choice of laws and jurisdiction. But, you know, for the people whose lives are affected, it is far from a clinical study. It is real life. And so I think it's going to be very interesting to see the way this plays out, because, of course, Texas has these very restrictive abortion laws. And so what Ken Paxton alleges here is that this doctor from New York, by sending abortion pills into the state of Texas, has violated Texas law. Now, he's not charging her with a crime. It's interesting. He has framed this as a civil lawsuit seeking civil damages and an injunction to make the doctors stop. On the other hand, we've got these shield laws in New York that say we are not going to help you. We are not going to do what we ordinarily do through the full faith and credit clause of the Constitution, where we help states enforce the laws when they reach into our states. New York and these 7 other states have these shield laws to prevent doctors from reaching into them to go after these doctors. So I think it's really interesting to see how this plays out. We could see a removal to federal court. We could see a countersuit by the doctor in New York who is sued. But I think eventually this case is going to be headed for higher courts to decide which of these 2 sets of laws is going to trump.
But doesn't, Barb, this just underscore how it's such a fallacy legally and factually that everything's left up to the states on their own and let them decide what they want to do, and we'll just leave abortion to the states and you can just move to a state if that's what you want? Because the reality is, if it gets removed to federal court and it winds its way up through the federal appellate system, a decision could be made that would impact all of the states, not just New York and not just Texas.
Yeah, I think it's such a great point. I think the other great point is that, you know, the Dobbs case created just this legal chaos across the country with a landscape where nobody really knows what the law is. Louis Brandeis was one of the more esteemed of the Supreme Court justices in history. And one of the things he said is better that the law be settled than that the law be settled right. And I'm not sure I agree in every instance of that, but important
Barb, I'm sorry.
to know the law.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Barb. My apologies. We have officials in Madison, Wisconsin. They're doing a briefing on today's awful school shooting. We're going to tune into them now.
We're currently reunifying them with their loved ones as well. We do understand that this process of reunification may have taken a while, and parents really wanted to see their children and give their children a hug. Certainly I would as a father, but we are fortunate that that process is complete. As such, I want to thank the Dean Clinic. This clinic actually shut down their doors today in order to provide a space so that students who survived this incident could be reunified with their loved ones, and we thank them for doing this. At this time, we're still working on a motive, trying to determine why this happened. We know that there is some information that may be circulating about the shooter. I cannot, at this time, formally tell you the age or gender or name of the shooter. We do not want to compromise any part of the investigation. But it is important to note that later today at 8:30, I plan to give an additional update, and I believe at that time we may be able to give you the answers to some of those questions. Here's what we know again. We have 3 people who have lost their lives. 2 of those people were persons who were pronounced dead at the scene, and 1 while on the way to the hospital. Of the 6 injured and taken to local hospitals, 2 students remain in critical condition. Their injuries are life-threatening. A teacher and 3 other students were taken to area hospitals with non-life-threatening injuries. 2 of those victims, 2 of those survivors, have been released from the hospital. So that is an update. Officers were dispatched to Abundant Life Christian School at 10:57. I can confirm that the first officers arrived at 11 a.m. and immediately went in the building 3 minutes later. The Crime Response Unit of Dane County District Attorney's Office, assisted by the Dane County Emergency Management, were mobilizing our Mass Violence Critical Response Team. Once again, our Mass Violence Critical Response Team has been notified. This is a group of people trained in responding to victims of mass violence, which includes social workers, attorneys, victims, professionals, former law enforcement, and members of our community. If you need further assistance or want to know how you can help, you can contact the Crime Response Program. They have a daytime number of 608-284-6908. They have an after-hours number for those who may want to help at 608-376-0164, 608-376-0164. Pre-planned or planned shootings, we believe, are preventable. if you see warning behaviors from someone that is planning an attack, say something, do something. You can report this at 1-800-MY-SUSO1, 1-800-MY-SUSO1. At this time, joining us is Director of Advancement, Barbara Weir.
Thank you. I understand there's questions regarding the school. We're happy to answer those to the best of our ability. We have been incredibly supported by Madison Police, Madison Fire, and the paramedics. They have been absolutely amazing to us. It was quite an afternoon for the reunification process, and we had so many people stepping up to help. Our families were amazing in their patience as we worked through this. We are so grateful, from the president up to the governor, the mayor. We have had so much support. This has obviously rocked our school community, but we know it affects not just our school community, but Madison and the greater area and all schools. And so our hope is that there will be some good that comes out of this as we can learn and grow and continue to support other schools.
Okay, we'll take questions. Scott, you got your first crack at it.
Chief, can you give us any details about if there were any warning signs that premeditated this, either at the school or with the family or elsewhere, that would have caused any red flags?
Yeah, that's what the officers and detectives are working on now. Hopefully this afternoon at our fourth press conference, I'll be able to answer that a little bit further. But right now, I cannot tell you. They're still talking to parents who are cooperating. And so hopefully we'll be able to give you a more detailed response as to any warning signs or anything that we may have possibly known prior to this.
All right, Maddie from WISC.
There's been heavy police presence at a home on the north side. Can you confirm if that's related to this?
I can confirm that it is related to this, and everyone is cooperating. And so hopefully later today, if you stick around, we'll be able to give you more information about that and what we may have learned from that process. Again, this is a situation where students and teachers were injured and killed, and everyone wants to cooperate. Everyone wants to give as much information as they can so we can piece this together for our community.
Thank you.
Okay, Phoebe from Wisconsin Watch.
Yeah, hi, Chief. So accounts online are sharing doctored and debunked photos to push a narrative about the identity of the shooter that goes far beyond what has been released publicly. Can you respond to that, and can you also say what effect that has on either the families of the victims or the public's trust in the law enforcement investigation if what you say contradicts this this narrative that's on social media?
Absolutely. Social media is something that, quite frankly, I can't control, and neither can anyone in this room. Everyone in here is a trusted and respectful journalist, and your word means a lot, which is why we're doing our third press conference of the day to get the actual truth out to what has happened. We have a PIO, 3 of them working today to make sure we have information. I will say this. If you're listening to this or you're at home and you're thinking about reposting or sending something that did not come from someone in this room, a trusted and respected journalist, or did not come from us, please don't do that. Because to answer the second part of your question, what that does is it does help erode the trust in this process, and that's all we have. And also, it could further fan the flames, if you will, of misinformation and of fear at a time where we need to come together and not be divided by anything.
All right, WMTV.
Hello. Although unfortunate to ask about, were there any lessons learned from back in May from the Mount Horeb shooting that you guys used in action today?
Yeah. So we were not, that's not my jurisdiction, and so I won't speak to anything that we learned at Mount Horeb, but I will speak to 25 years of law enforcement. What I've learned is that every opportunity is an opportunity to grow, do better, and train. This department trains constantly on this thing. I spoke about it earlier. We train as far recent as actually today, because our set medics were training at the training center 3 miles away, and their training day can turn into an actual response. So as far as the incident at Mount Horeb, it wasn't my jurisdiction. So the only thing that I can tell you is we try to learn from everything and try to get better. Even this one, we'll do an after-action debrief.
We have had an amazing partnership with the DOJ and the Office of Schools Safety because they have done trainings, they've provided school safety grants, and we have participated in both of those school safety grants to harden our school, if you can use that language. We do not have metal detectors, but we do have a number of security protocols in place. We have always been told not to share our security protocols with publicly because then those who might want to do harm will know your security protocols. But the students are aware that there are cameras in the building, and we do monitor those regularly in the offices so that we know what is happening in the hallways. We also have other safety measures throughout the building, but as to a metal detector, no, we do not have. We do abide by the policy of visual scans every morning as students come into the building, so every student
The school has a partnership with the Office of School Safety with the Wisconsin Attorney General's office. Did police have access to blueprints of the school as a result of that partnership, and how did that inform the police response?
we do have them. We have that all uploaded. I don't know what the police did. I can't speak to that.
You want to?
So
Okay.
I can speak to the blueprints and the maps. We do have those uploaded as part of our reporting to the Department of Justice and the Office of School Safety. How they were used, I don't know. I do know that the police were going through and they were working with staff to secure the different areas, and that they did have maps. So whether those are the blueprint maps or what they were using, that I can't speak to, but I do know that they did have maps.
Just to clarify, when you said visual scans, is that sort of like looking the student up and down, or is that going through a scanner device?
It's a visual scan where we look at the student to see if there's anything unique or unusual in them.
All right, Ken from WKPT.
Sure. If I could get Barbara back real quick, I'm so sorry. I don't know if you've had a ton of conversations with parents or staff members today, but what is the prevailing thought or message that they wanted to impart to you in administration?
Sure. I've had the opportunity to speak to the parents at the reunification site a couple of different times. The families that I did speak to mostly were, as you would expect at Abundant Life, they were supportive. They were amazingly patient and kind. They were offering repeatedly, we're praying for you, we're praying for our family, because at ALCS we call ourselves the Challenger family. We see ourselves as a family, not just a community. And whether their child was affected by this or not, they were affected by it, because what affects one part of the body affects all, as we know, the Bible says. And so we hold that dear. We also have a very strong faith in our community that in spite of tragedy, God is working, and we believe that God is good in everything and that he turns beauty for ashes. And so I had a number of families who mentioned that to me, that this wasn't a surprise to God and that he's going to do something mighty with it. And so we're holding on to those words and we're continuing to believe and trust in him. He is our foundation at Abundant Life Christian School. We exist to bring and to build disciples of Jesus Christ, and so we have complete faith that he will carry us through this.
All right.
Joining me now is Jim Kavanaugh, retired ATF special agent in charge and MSNBC law enforcement analyst. Jim, I hate that you and I connect because of tragedies like this. I wanted to ask you a question. In Wisconsin, for a handgun, you don't need a permit to purchase one. You don't have to register your firearm, and you don't have to have any type of licensing to be able to own one. From an investigative standpoint, does that complicate things at all for law enforcement?
Well, it's pretty normal, Katie, because the Midwest and the West and the southern states are very loose on the firearms law. So that's pretty common across the center of the country in the West. What ATF agents are doing there in the scene is they put in an urgent trace on the gun. And that goes immediately to the ATF National Firearms Tracing Center. And we have a desk there. Depending on the manufacturer of the gun, they're dialed right into the manufacturers. And the manufacturers, help us with this. So they'll call right into the company, whether it's Smith & Wesson, Colt, or Glock, and they know right away it's ATF's tracing center calling with an urgent trace. And they'll say, go in your records. Where did you made this gun? Where did you sell it to? They give us a wholesaler, then we got to go to the wholesaler, retailer, it might go through a few dealers, and then we got to get those leads out, and agents are dispatched to find it. It's a juvenile, we know that from the chief, and to buy a rifle from a licensed dealer federally, you have to be 18. To buy a handgun, you have to be 21. So a child could not purchase the gun in Wisconsin from a dealer, a licensed dealer. Could he get a gun? Yes. If an adult, gifted him a gun, he could get a handgun like that. Where we see in half the school shootings, Katie, where children are the killers or shooters, they just take it from home. They take their father's or mother's gun. They take the grandparents' gun that's unsecured. Or even their gun sometimes if their parents have given them a gun to hunt or shoot, and they take that to the school.
Jim, quickly, there's 420 students, according to this press conference. The age of these kids, does that impact the ability to conduct the investigation? Because these are the eyewitnesses, presumptively, of what happened here.
Well, it does, but, you as a prosecutor know we're probably not going to have a prosecutable case here because we have a deceased killer. And he's probably acted alone, so, could possibly the parents be charged? We don't know any of that, if that's going to happen. So I don't think it's that critical. I think that there'll be enough witnesses and enough evidence at the scene that they'll be able not to, have to interview too many kids. And it does go through 12th grade, so there may be some high school kids that they can't interview.
Jim Kavanaugh, thanks for joining us and as always, sharing your insight in this tragedy. I appreciate it. And that does it for me. The Readout with Joy Reid. It's up next.
Tonight on The Readout.
What do you know about these manned SUV-sized drones flying over New Jersey? Is it an alien invasion?
I mean, no disrespect to New Jersey when I say that I think it's very unlikely that an alien invasion would begin.
Watch your mouth. We lived it.
I know, but
damn.
Secretary Buttigieg having a little fun with the increasingly wild drone conspiracy theories. But conspiracies are deeply ingrained in the American bloodstream, and the incoming president is surrounded by conspiracy theorists. Also tonight, the right's glorification of Daniel Penny and people like him. Penny's claim to fame, putting a homeless man into a chokehold until he was dead. Plus, the future of the Democratic Party, school shooting survivor and anti-gun activist David Hogg launches his bid for DNC vice chair on the same day that there was yet another school mass shooting in America. David Hogg joins me tonight. And we begin tonight with the drone mystery on the eastern seaboard. Now, for those of you who do not live on the East Coast, I'm talking about the nearly daily drone sightings over the past month. First spotted in New Jersey on November 18th, they appear to show up in the late hours of the night, although there's still a lot that we do not know about them, like if they're present every single night. And it is precisely the what we don't know that is driving interest in them and demands that the federal government provide answers. New York Governor Kathy Hochul announced that the federal government is sending high-tech drone detection resources. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy has also asked the White House for more federal resources to investigate the sightings.